Please help me welcome Dave.
Good morning. Good morning. There are ghosts all around us. I know a lot of you folks don't believe in that kind of stuff, but I know a lot of you do. For those of you that do, you're right, because there are a lot of ghosts around us. I don't know why, but a lot of ghosts live in hotels for some reason. I guess if you live somewhere, you gotta live in a hotel as well. Like the Elms Hotel in Excelsior Springs, Missouri. It's haunted. Ghosts have been blamed for numerous unexplained fires that have happened over the years in that hotel. For the Walnut Street Inn in Springfield, Missouri, it's haunted. In one room, there's a ghost of a woman that sits at a table drinking tea. Ghosts and paranormal activity have also been reported at the Beaumont Hotel in Beaumont, Kansas, outside of Wichita. Folks, there are ghosts around us. And they're closer than you think. Like as close as an old hotel in Lawrence, Kansas. Now when I think about these kind of things, I wonder if you think about some movies, scary movies about haunted houses, like Psycho, and the Bates Motel, and the shower scene, and the scream, and the knife, and the music. Woo! That was scary. If you haven't seen it, you gotta see it. Alfred Hitchcock. Or The Shining. Picture Jack Nicholson, his craziest eyes, long-handled axe. His wife locked in the room. She's screaming, trying to get away from him, trying to climb out the window. She can't climb out, it's too small. He's chopping the axe at the door. She's screaming. He chops a hole in the door this big, sticks his face in and says, "Here's Johnny!" Whew, heart attack. Yeah, folks, there are haunted hotels out there. And I want to tell you about the one in Lawrence. But first, I think it's fair, I got to tell you a little bit about the history of Lawrence. Now, we all know, if you go back into the 1800s, the issue of slavery severely divided our country. And in fact, it was so divided that Congress passed a law called the Missouri Compromise, which was intended to keep the balance of power between the slave states and free states. So anytime a free state or a slave state was admitted to the Union, the opposite had to happen as well. So for example, Missouri, a slave state, was introduced as admitted into the Union, and Maine was admitted to the Union as well. Maine was a free state. This kept the balance of power. In 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act was passed. That was a pretty simple act. It identified Kansas and Nebraska as territories, which were precursors to becoming states. It identified and planned out for millions and millions and millions of acres of farmland to be made available to settlers who were moving west. It also identified land that was going to be preserved for the Transcontinental Railroad that was going to be built. Pretty simple act. However, there was a little clause in there called the Popular Sovereignty Clause, which said white male residents of those territories had the right to vote at the time of statehood on whether that state would be a free state or a slave state. That clause itself undermined the Missouri Compromise. And it's really what led to the border wars between Kansas and Missouri and what we know as Lady Kansas. Well, the abolitionists, who primarily lived in the northeastern part of the United States, and the abolitionists who were against slavery, flooded to the territory of Kansas. And they encouraged all kinds of settlers to come there, hoping that the territory would be free and that the subsequent state would be a free state. One of the abolitionists that moved along with this group of folks was Colonel Shaler Eldridge. Now in 1855, these abolitionists built a hotel called the Free State Hotel. And a year later, Colonel Eldridge bought the hotel, spiffed it up, made it a really grand place. Later that year, pro-slavery terrorists attacked Lawrence, fired a cannon directly at the Free State Hotel, blew it to smithereens. Building caught fire, burned to the ground. Colonel Eldridge said, "I'll build it, I'll rebuild it, and I'll rebuild it again and again and again." And he did. Now, in spite of all the violence and bloodshed, Kansas became a state in 1861, a free state. But that didn't dissuade the pro-slavery faction in Missouri. And in 1863, pro-slavery terrorist William Quantrell and his marauding band of bushwhackers set their sights on Lawrence, Kansas, with the goal of once and for all eradicating the abolitionists and making Kansas a slave state. On August 21st, 1863, Quantrell and 400 of his raiders descended upon the city of Lawrence on horseback before dawn. By 9 a.m., 180 men and boys lie dead, and the city of Lawrence was literally burnt to the ground. Now the leaders adopted the motto, "From ashes to eternity," and they began to rebuild the city. Colonel Eldridge, true to his promise, rebuilt his hotel, this time naming it the Eldridge Hotel. And for the next 60 years, that hotel was the most grand hotel west of the Mississippi. By the 1920s, though, the old hotel had, well, gotten old, and dilapidated and run down. But the city leaders at the time saw that hotel as a symbol of their will and perseverance to have a free community and a free state. So they remodeled it and restored it to its original grandeur. But by the 1960s, once again, the hotel had fallen on hard times. In fact, this time, the interstate highway system was built, and rather than roads taking people and travelers to downtowns, they went around downtowns. And businesses moved from downtowns out to the suburbs to be by the hotels. Downtowns across the country started to suffer and wither, and businesses closed. And it happened in Lawrence, and it happened to the Eldridge Hotel, and it closed in 1970. I think that's, Avery, when the ghosts moved in. They haven't moved out since. The hotel sat vacant for 15 years. And then in 1985, an investor group bought it, remodeled it, returned the original lobby to its original splendor, upgraded the rooms into lavish suites, but the ghosts were still there. And even another ownership change in 2004, where once again the hotel was upgraded and restored and remodeled, the ghosts were still there. The hotel is still in business. You can make a reservation. When you get back to your office, you want to make one. It's located at 701 Massachusetts Street. But I'm going to give you a warning. During your stay there, you're going to encounter cold spots in the hotel. You're going to experience spots where the temperature suddenly goes from warm to cold. In your room, your mirrors will inexplicably fog as if someone is blowing a breath on it. Lights in your room will turn on and off by themselves. And when you ride the elevator, it always stops at the 5th floor. It opens and closes the doors automatically. The reason for that is they believe room 506 is a portal to the spiritual world. So when you're staying there, you may want to check in on Colonel Eldridge, see how he's doing. You may want to check on the ghosts of Quantrell and his sidekick, Bloody Bill Anderson. I hope you enjoy your stay there, but make sure you check out.